Well, hello, everybody. I'm Dan Fazio, and I'm with Joe Calloway this morning. Joe was named the 2021 Pittsburgh Vetrepreneur of the Year by VIQTORY, which publishes GI Jobs magazine. Thank you, Joe, for joining us this morning, and congratulations on being named the Pittsburgh Vetrepreneur of the Year. It's hard to say, so we call it the Pittsburgh Voy.
Yeah, it's a tough one to articulate, but I'm very excited about it.
Great. Well, you're no stranger to awards. You won the, among other, the EY Entrepreneur of the Year award. What's it mean to you to be named the Pittsburgh Voy?
It's super exciting because magazines like GI Jobs was an intricate part of my transition out of the military. So to be affiliated with something that made such an impact on me is super cool. And the veteran, the idea of being a veteran is something I hold near and dear to my heart. And my time in my service, I believe, was what allowed me to become successful, learning leadership through, being thrown into the fire and how to deal with people from, multiple different backgrounds and, managing, true diversity is very common in the military. And I think that's something that made my company special because, I just don't think people get taught that in standard educational institutes, but the military definitely does that, and something that has helped me out a lot in my career.
Well, speaking of your company, you were selected for this award in part because of your success in starting and building RE360. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that company does?
So what we do is we buy houses, a lot of single family, some small multifamily, 1 to 5 unit buildings, and then some commercial buildings as well, warehouses and inner city kind of street front retail buildings. And we rehabilitate them with our construction company called Build 360 and then rent them out. Most of the time we don't sell them. So we own about 550 units right now, about 300 properties. And they're mainly in South Pittsburgh, and it's the area that I actually grew up in. About a mile right now, where I sit is about a mile from where I was born and raised. So we stick to one area, and we're trying to kind of help that area revitalize itself because it's been through some hard times in the last decade, and we're starting to see some real progress. So it's a 2-tiered thing where we're trying to revitalize a neighborhood while making profitable investments. And I think those things go hand in hand, take a little bit longer, but ultimately they ultimately are more profitable and more rewarding because you can see the neighborhood develop around you.
Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. You enlisted in the Navy right out of high school, is that right?
Yes.
And served 8 years. What did you do in the Navy?
I was an electronic technician, and then I was a recruiter for the last 3 years of my 8 years.
And you used a re-enlistment bonus to buy your first property, is that correct?
Yeah, I bought a property with a re-enlistment bonus that I was saving since I re-enlisted in 2001. And I had a few bucks in my pocket, so I was able to buy a house in close proximity to where I grew up. And that was my first investment / mistake.
So Joe, you were talking about your first property you invested in to fix up. And how did that work out for you?
So the first property I did, I worked on it. I bought it while I was a recruiter, and I'd work on it at nights and weekends. And anyone who's ever been a recruiter, the nights are short because you work into the night, and the weekends aren't very often because you work in the weekends as well. So I worked when I could work on it, but then when I got out, I worked on it continuously for multiple months. So I put a lot of time in. It took about a year to do, just because I was doing it part-time, and then I focused on it, and that didn't work out real well either because I sold it and I made my money back but no profit. So the upside to that, hindsight being 2020, is I learned through the school of the hard knocks. I had a partner who was going to help with the construction. That person didn't really work out, so I had to learn construction. And at that point, it was through Black & Decker electrical manuals and how to wire a panel and how to hang a drywall and how to do tile. Now with YouTube, it's so much easier, but at that point, it was a little more challenging. But I learned a lot by actually doing it, which is, I feel like that's a testament to the military, because that's how how most people in the military learn, through, hands-on actually doing it versus sitting in a classroom for, multiple years and then realizing they don't know how to do it. So I think the military has really gave me the confidence to just go out there and try things. And most of the time you're going to be successful.
And that didn't deter you. Your first experience didn't keep you from doing it again. You bought another property.
Yep.
What happened this time?
We bought another one, and that one also didn't work out as I wanted to, because I wanted to sell it and flip it. And it was right at that point, it's like 2007, 2008. The market was drastically cooling off, so I couldn't sell it. But the real estate market was cooling off. But I could rent it. So I rented it, and I was not making my, at that point I had taken some of these get rich quick classes and like millionaire overnight. I still have a portfolio or a binder I carry around that says $5 million net worth in 12 months, which is what one of the courses was promising. So I was hoping to flip this house and make tens of thousands of dollars. Instead, I rented the house and I was making $50 a month. So not something you write home about, but it was a pretty cool concept if you can continue to build that idea on scale and ultimately get better at it as well. So your margin becomes $100, $200, $300 per unit per month, and you do it with multiple hundreds of units. So that one didn't go as planned, but it got me into the rental game. And then from there on out, I kept focusing on rentals versus trying to flip properties and get rich quick. Instead, you grow wealthy in real estate by growing old is one of the old adages in the game. And I found that it is true. And as I get older, hopefully I'll grow wealthy. But for right now, I'll keep building a good business and have a very nice income coming in every single month through all these rentals.
Well, when you bought that second property, you were still active duty at that point, or were you out?
At that point, I was out.
Okay.
And I'd done a couple other things while I was in the military, because I was taking these classes while I was in the military. And actually, my CO at the recruiting command gave me a flyer, and it was he said, we got this flyer, and it was all like get rich quick stuff. Like it was like actually Donald Trump actually spoke at it. I didn't show up for that day, but this was in 2004, 5. And but one of the things was real estate. And I ended up going to that course. It cost a few $1,000s, which at the time was my entire, that was a lot of my savings. And although it was kind of pie in the sky, it gave me a lot of good ideas. But, my commanding officer got me into my first get rich quick course.
Did you talk a little bit about your exit plan from the Navy? Did you have a solid plan, or were you just sort of muddling along, or how'd it go?
That was tough. I don't think I had a real good plan when I was getting out. I knew I wanted to. I wanted to do real estate. I knew I wanted to flip houses. I wanted to, but I didn't know exactly which direction to go. That was very challenging. And like I said at the beginning of the interview, like GI Jobs, I was always reading GI Jobs. I actually thought about going to Home Depot. Had a really nice program for vets at that point that I always saw in there, and I liked building, and I liked going. I loved Home Depot. I still love Home Depot and Lowe's and going and looking at tools. So that was always an option. So I thought of a bunch of different things, but I didn't have a real good transition plan other than I wanted to build my own thing and start my own business, but I didn't know how that was going to go. So no, I really didn't. I thought at this point I was taking these get rich quick classes. I was going to be rich in a few months, so I didn't have to worry about that.
So you did have that dream of being a business owner someday. I mean, is that something you had long dreamed of, or was that just sort of as you were getting out of the Navy and deciding what to do next?
Yeah, no, it wasn't something I wasn't like born with, like the desire to own a business or be an entrepreneur. I think it came about through trying to buy these houses and then going on. I thought a lot about going into some of the officer programs, and I was finishing up my bachelor's degree as I was getting out. So I had a lot of different ideas and plans, but none of it was to, build a real estate company or build a business or be an entrepreneur. And I think it comes down to is like entrepreneurship's a buzzword today. But I don't think it's really promoted. And I think in the military, I think there's a lacking of that too, because I think a lot of people in the military, entrepreneurship is oftentimes associated with like innovators and quirky people. But the real successful entrepreneurs, I think, are people who can put their head down, work hard, continue to focus on things, lead people, which are all attributes of military members. So I always talk to some of my peers who are still in, and they're always like, I'm going to go work for a consulting firm. I'm going to go work for this. And they could do this. And I tell them they could be a chief operating officer of a company. If you're a command master chief, you run more people than most people at one of the bigger businesses here in Pittsburgh. Like, so I always tell them, I think military people shoot short because their skill set is so high, but they don't recognize it. And it lends itself to entrepreneurship.
So when did you actually launch RE360, and what inspires you to do that? I mean, what made you think, okay, I could this could be my gig?
So after the military, I was still doing houses, kind of a side hustle. My wife convinced me that I should go back to school. I was taught the English language through two places that should not teach the English language. One is Pittsburgh, where you have a heavy accent, and especially the inner city of Pittsburgh. And two is the Navy. So I was using words like yins, with a lot of F-bombs in between. So cursed like a sailor. So my wife thought I should go back, get a little more polished. So I went back to Pitt to get my MBA. And I got, at that time, my first daughter was on the way, and we thought it was a good idea that I maybe made some money, because the first many years of entrepreneurship, you don't make any money. So I took a job with Landmark Properties Group. I learned commercial real estate. I rose the ranks relatively quickly in that organization. And then at that point, a couple of years later in 2009 is when I jumped off and I started RE360 with a partner. And we were really focusing on commercial real estate. And we were looking at buying actually the debt behind the commercial, big pieces of commercial real estate. We couldn't get that idea off the ground after about a year. And I had always bought houses. So that's how RE360 became the primary focus in 2009, 2010. And then we started buying houses. Our office was in the south side of Pittsburgh. And we started just buying single family houses. We built a construction company and started renovating them. So RE360 wasn't even the primary focus, and single family housing wasn't. It was more of a side hustle that turned into something that's now a lucrative business.
And how did you fund this venture?
Initially, I just didn't get paid. So when you're not getting paid, that's pretty easy to fund. But I had met a couple people. My first funder was an aunt and uncle who lent me $30,000 to buy a house. And then I actually successfully flipped that and paid them a nice return. And then they lent me more money to buy the next building and the next building. So that was the initial thing. But when I was in getting my MBA, I met a lot of people who had some resources. And also when I was working for Landmark Properties, I enjoyed real estate and talking to people. And a lot of the people who I was working with or working for had a lot of money as well. So I asked them to borrow money, and a lot of them funded me early on to go out and buy the real estate. But from the company standpoint, I kind of just, lived humbly and lived off the rents that I had already coming in from the handful of units that I'd purchased over the last few years.
What would you say was the biggest challenge getting this off the ground, starting a business from the ground up?
I would like the early years of not making money. Like, I think people underestimate. I think you walk into entrepreneurship and business and you see people who are successful and you don't realize there's a 20-year history of them doing it. And then they're now successful and they have resources and money and things like that. And I don't think that you realize how you don't make money. Like when I say I didn't make money, they were like, what do you mean? Well, I was making $65,000 a year at Landmark Properties, and then I quit and I didn't make anything for 2.5 years. And when I say anything, I mean a big goose egg. So that doesn't go over well when you walk in the door at night after a year or two and say, we still don't make any money. So that ultimate early sacrifice is probably the most challenging thing that I look back on now with fondness. But I think that's one of the hardest things about entrepreneurship is really the realities of it, because everyone sees these videos, or you see Elon Musk, or you see these guys who do these big, crazy, extravagant ideas and get billions of dollars of funding. But most of your entrepreneurs are, working out of their, parents' basement, starting their company, or, not eating lunch because they can't afford it. And then ultimately 5-10 years later, they look back and those sacrifices were well worth it. But during those times, not a good time.
Yeah. Did you have any mentors in those early days, in those hard days?
I had a good network of people who would always help me. And what I found is, frankly, if you just reach out to people, they'll talk to you. So I always had a pretty good network of people just by calling people and having coffee with them and picking their brain. And most people will just, including myself, will tell you what anything, their businesses are an open book. There's no trade secret. So I had a lot of people who would help. And most of those contacts didn't come from someone I went to school with or was raised with. It would just become from someone I'd see an article about in the newspaper, and then I'd figure out how to get in contact with them and go have coffee with them. And, some of those people I'm still friends with to this day.
At what point did it occur to you that this is growing, this is sustainable, this actually might work and be a successful business? How long did it take to get to that point where you felt like we're rolling?
It probably was like 2013, 14. So about 3 or 4 years into it. I was making more than what I was making when I had a real job at Landmark Properties. I could see the portfolio growing. I could project real cash flow coming in. So that was probably that. But then we had a lot of growing pains to where I still think I was still just basically working for myself and kind of, for lack of a better word, fledgling in business until probably about 2018. I had a incident where I found my CFO was stealing from me. And but that woke me up and I had won a bunch of awards, EY Entrepreneur of the Year, so I thought I was real high and mighty and thinking I'm the businessman, that I'm a formidable business person. And this kind of slapped me in my face and woke me up. So the reality of it is when I really think about it, I think 2018, 2019, 10 years after inception was when I really felt like I was no longer working for myself. I was no longer, making money through my investments. I actually had a real business that was growing, where I had real great people around me who were helping me grow the business. In some cases, pushing harder than I'm pushing because they care about the business more. So I would really say probably it took 10 years to really have a real sustainable business.
Well, you've been credited with revitalizing the business district of Allentown, the section of Pittsburgh near where you grew up. You alluded to it earlier. That's also where your company is located now. What inspired you to invest in this particular neighborhood?
So I always stuck to South Pittsburgh, because that's where I grew up. I grew up, in the neighboring neighborhood of Allentown, which is Knoxville and Mount Oliver. And I always wanted to invest in the neighborhood I grew up in, but those neighborhoods were really bad, 10 years ago when I started. So we started in the South Side, and then the South Side kind of comes up the hill and hits Allentown. We bought a lot in Mount Washington, which sandwiches Allentown. So we kind of just converged on that area. And it was exciting because that was the zip code that I grew up in, 15210. And then we started buying, and I kind of just bought a property because it was extremely cheap on the business district, and it went really well. And we rented it to a really amazing entrepreneur named Josh Lucas, who started a business incubator and really helped revitalize the area. Then we moved our office to Allentown. So it wasn't necessarily, the strategy was forming as we went. And I think we happened to have some luck as we just kind of came into this opportunity because we bought a building and kept going with it, and some idea of I want to rebuild the neighborhood that I grew up in, and I don't want to go across the river or some of the other towns in Pittsburgh that might be perceived as doing well. I want to do something that has a little more of an impact.
Well, speaking of impact, how has the Allentown neighborhood and its people benefited from your investment there?
So we've had, like, the business district, when we started buying buildings, and we own about 15 to 17 buildings up on the business district, which is only a few blocks long. So we own a lot of the buildings in the business district. But when we came up here in 2013, 2014 to Allentown, the business district was 25% occupied. Now today it hovers between 88 and 95% occupied. And we have a diner, we have a really nice hair salon. We have the business incubator, Work Hard Pittsburgh. We have a vegan restaurant that does really well and is ranked, as top vegan restaurants, definitely in the region, if not across the country. Really, a really special place. So we have all these different places now that the business district has been reactivated, which ultimately brings jobs. We hire a ton of people from the neighborhood in our company. We have so many people who bought houses in our company, in our neighborhood. So we have the jobs, and then we do a ton of this community projects. We actually have I think Earth Day is Friday, and we're going to be out on the streets cleaning up the Warrington Avenue Business District. We got 30 to 40 volunteers who are going to be out there. So we continue to give back and keep trying to make the Allentown a more livable and great place to live.
Tell me how it was how did you navigate the coronavirus pandemic as a business owner?
Yeah, when that happened, we really battened down the hatches, and we put a plan together. What if we can't make income for 3 years? What if our rents drop by 50%? Can we still survive? And we sort of strength tested the business in March to see what would have to happen. And we are excited because we needed to lose a whole lot of our rents before, we couldn't pay our team. We need it had to be more than just a blip or even a big correction. It had to be like a major catastrophe in our financial and the economy that for us to be hit. So it kind of pushed us into kind of looking at the company and going, okay, we are really strong. We left pretty much everyone on, and they worked from home. We did very well working from home. Some of our construction projects stopped for a short period of time. We made some concessions and things to the tenants and really tried to work with them to keep everyone in good standing, not just our company, but the companies that we work with or our tenants. So yeah, we just adapted, and we actually came out ahead because, things went really well through that. And, taught us a lot about our company and how we can survive through something. But we kind of made lemons in the lemonade and bought more properties and renovated more properties and kept going on as business as usual.
Well, this is probably a cliche question, but if you could boil it down to one thing, what do you believe is the key to your success as a business owner?
I think probably just basic, like stick-to-itiveness. You just got to keep doing it. And I think everyone thinks it's like people like, oh, you are so busy, you have so many ideas and this and that. But I don't. I think I'm a pretty simple guy, but I have stuck to buying residential real estate in South Pittsburgh in the neighborhoods I grew up since my first one back in early 2000, so I fast forward and I'm almost 20 years into buying these things in the same neighborhood and doing the construction. And I just kept sticking to it. And we, the whole team, keeps getting better and better. So I think most people want that success in 1 to 2 to 3 years. I'll give this 18 months and if I'll see if it works out. Well, it's probably not going to work out, because if you think it's going to take 18 months, it's going to take 36. And when you get to 36 months, it's not going to be as good as you thought. But if you get to 10 years, it's going to be better than you can imagine.
Well, I know you employ at least one Navy veteran, Eddie, that I met yesterday. How will you continue to pay forward your success?
Yeah, I think being involved in the causes for the military. I mean, frankly, hiring Navy, hiring military, hiring Army, Marines, Air Force, any military member you're not doing the military a favor. You're doing what you should be doing, because they're phenomenal human beings with all the training and education that they need. I used to doubt my line item on my resume in the Navy, because one of my partners was a Wharton and Yale grad and all this kind of fancy stuff. And I always doubted, but every meeting we went in, everyone would say, oh, you're in the Navy, tell me about and then, oh, I was in the Army, I was in this. And we start talking about that. It's such a huge benefit. So hiring military is a no-brainer. I mean, frankly, I need to do more of that for my own selfish benefit, because it's an amazing caliber of human. But I think ultimately making sure that, the things that the military gave me, I give back. And a lot of that is just sage wisdom that I got from so many officers and chief petty officers. And, my CO thinking about me to send me to this goofy get rich quick class because he knew I was in the real estate. Those little things are so important. So I definitely want to get more involved and some of these causes, and then some of the guys who are struggling out there who need that mentorship and that camaraderie, because that was one of the things moving back to Pittsburgh, which doesn't have a big military presence. You don't have that camaraderie. You just left the fleet. You get back to recruiting duty and you have four Navy people around you who all go in different directions at the end of the day. And I could only imagine the guys who are coming back from, doing duty overseas, and whether it be Afghanistan or, over in that area, you miss your buddies. So reaching out and having powwows, we should be getting more beers together.
Well, what advice would you have for transitioning service members or veterans who might be interested in starting their own business?
One, reach out and talk to people who've done it. You'd be amazed. There's so many entrepreneurs who are also veterans that, there's a gentleman, Bob Fragrasso, who's he's a Marine. He was always very open and kind to me. We grew up in the same neighborhood, 30, 40 years apart, but I reached out to him and we bonded immediately over our military experience. And if I called him right now, he'd pick up and bend over backward to help another service member. And he's very far into his career, very successful. So you have a huge network of people. You just have to dig down deep and use that as a ticket to get in the door. Your military service is, in my opinion, better than a Harvard education, a Yale education, any of those things, whether you're an enlisted officer. It's a huge ticket. So lean on that and lean into that to get that advice. And never second guess that either. Like, never doubt what you have on your resume, like I did, because it was one of my biggest strengths, which I always looked at it as, hey, I didn't go to a traditional college. I left right out of high school to go to the military because I might have not been qualified to get into a certain college or whatever it might be. But I went to something that was an elite organization of humans, and not everyone gets the opportunity to serve. And that's how we should be treating our military experience, as something that is so special, and it gives you the experience you need. Leadership, hands-on training, the understanding of how to work 12 on, 12 off, how to stand duty, how to be on 24 hours, how to be, you don't leave for 3 days and you just work to get the job done. All that is more critical than any theory or any textbook thing they could possibly teach you in college. So believe in yourself is the number one thing, and shoot for the stars. Don't think you can only do X, Y, Z. I could only be an electronics person because I was in electronics, but my electronics was a lot of my formal education in the military. But the real education came at how to lead people through crisis and how to figure things out and how to, build a team.
That's really well said. So here's a tough question. What do you do for fun? How do you relax?
I'm a dad, so I got a lot of dad duties right now. So that's that. I'll go to my daughter's lacrosse game tonight, and so that'll be something. But I enjoy working. I enjoy my team. I play basketball once in a while, but I hurt myself. I'm at that age where every time I do something too physical, I hurt myself. So I don't know. Maybe I got to start fishing or doing something.
There you go. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't talked about?
No, just a thank you to what you do. And like I told you, that's a very genuine story where I used to look at the GI jobs every time it would come in. Everyone knew it. Recruiting, that when that came in, make sure Callaway got a copy, because I was very into that. It was a very helpful publication because you could see something that I do think sometimes the military falls short on is their transitioning of vets, because they're such high caliber human beings and so capable, but I don't always think they get out thinking that. So thank you for what you guys do, and thanks for this awesome award as well. This is my highest of all the kudos. This one means the most because it's something that I see as the building blocks, being a veteran, being in the military, and it means something that the community of veterans have said something to recognize that.
Well, certainly very well deserved. And thank you for the kind words about GI jobs. We're celebrating our 20th year this year. Our 20th anniversary is coming up in December. So we hope you'll be part of that celebration. We sure you will. But thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us this morning. We're so grateful for that.
Definitely. Thank you. And anything I could be doing to help out, let me know in the veteran communities.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thank you.